Oh, hello, my name's Anita Dixon. I'm going to teach you how to make a lapped zip. A lapped zip is a zip where the zipper or the zip is hidden away underneath a flap like this. It's a very commonly used zip in the side of a skirt or the back of a skirt or a dress, and it's a lovely zip because you don't see the teeth. It hides away underneath that. It's actually not a difficult application, but it does have a number of steps, and I will go through the steps very slowly with a lot of detail, so that hopefully you'll get a beautiful zip every time. One of the things I do, and you'll notice as I go, is I tack a lot, and I encourage you to do the tacking. Don't try and take the shortcuts, because the shortcuts usually mean you'll do more unpicking than if you do the hand tacking as you go. Now, to do this, I'm going to actually use 2 pieces of fabric to make a sample. This is not actually being put into a skirt because it's easier to see how to do it in a sample. We're going to put the zip in between these 2 pieces of fabric. So what I'd like you to do first is take the 2 pieces of fabric, lay one directly over the other so that these edges here line up perfectly. Okay, here I've lined up the 2 edges of the fabric, so these 2 edges that we're going to sew together, and I've got the fabric so that the wrong side is showing. So the wrong side of the fabric is the fabric that will be on the inside of the garment if we're making a skirt, and the right sides of the fabric are together facing each other, and these would be where you would have a nice design, a print or a nice sheen or something on the fabric, because we always do our sewing on the inside of the fabric on the wrong side, so that when we turn it out it looks really good. Okay, in Australia we call this thing here the zip tab. Now sometimes I might call it a zip pull or a zipper pull, and if I do that I apologise, it's just I've been reading a lot of American magazines lately. This down here is called the bottom stop, and that's basically at the bottom of the zip, and it stops this zip tab from opening up all the way down and opening up past that. Okay, now what we have to do is place the zip on the edge of the fabric about 1/2 centimetre from the top, and then we're going to mark down the side here where the bottom stop actually is. Okay, and you can see right here where I've actually marked that. It's just below where the bottom stop is here, so that I won't go past that when I'm doing the basting stitch on the machine. Okay, I've removed the zip is no longer there, but I have the mark there, which is where the bottom stop was. What we're going to do is actually stitch from the top down to here in a basting stitch, or a tacking stitch is basically a long stitch, and that will just hold that closed for now, and then we'll apply the zip and unpick that later. Then when we get to this part here, we'll actually do a little bit of 2 forward stitches, 2 or 3 backwards, and then forwards again and back stitch here, but at a normal stitch length of 2.5, because this would be like the rest of the skirt or the rest of the trousers or dress or whatever. The zip would be up the top, and then the rest of the seam is closed with normal stitching. Okay, it's recommended by many people that you actually have a wider seam for a zip. A normal seam would be 1.5 centimetres, so when you're cutting out your skirt or your dress, allow an extra 1 centimetre width. That means that you'll have no trouble putting your zip in, and you'll always have enough seam allowance to place the zip. So just to remind yourself, it might be wise to actually make some marks down here just to remind yourself 2.5 centimetres rather than the 1.5. Okay, here I've marked the 2.5 centimetres from this edge where my seams will be, and I've also pinned down the sample, and I've pinned at right angles, which means that you can sew over the pins, or if you prefer to remove the pins, then you can actually take them out very easily with your right hand as you sew. The next stage will be to go to the sewing machine. Okay, at this stage the machine has the normal presser foot on it. It is a straight stitch, so on the banana sewing machine we're using the 0 for stitch width because it's straight. We've got the needle position in the centre, and we've also got stitch length. We're going to change stitch length from 2.5 down to 5 because we're going to use a basting stitch or a tacking stitch, which is a long stitch which holds fabric together while we're sewing, and then we can unpick it very easily later. Okay, we're going to baste the top of the seam closed right now. We have to put the presser foot down, wind the needle into the fabric, and then we're going to go forwards with the long stitch. Okay. Good if the machine was switched on. There we go, forwards with the long stitch. Now this is where the bottom stop was, so I'm actually going to change the stitch length dial here, make that back to 2.5, and then I'm going to stitch 2 stitches forward, 2 stitches backwards, 2 or 3, okay, and then forwards down to the end of that seam, remembering that this would be the bottom of a skirt or a pair of shorts or a pair of pants or whatever. And I've done back stitching at the end there as well, so that holds it together. Okay, cut threads. And we're going to take those pins out. Okay, take all the pins out. Then we'll be pressing this seam so that it's nice and flat and it's ready for the next stage. Okay, I'm going to iron that flat just as I stitched it, and that will just make it all nice and flat and very easy to work with. Then we have to unfold that so we have the whole thing opened out, and we'll be opening out this seam here and ironing that flat also. Okay, now once that's opened and ironed flat, you take a look. Now this is actually the top bit. This is where the bottom stop was, so this is where the zip is going to go in. So looking at the fabric as you have sewn it, so from top to bottom, this is the top, and you're going to just flip that side of the fabric underneath, and you're going to leave just the seam allowance out, okay, because we're going to use that in a minute to do something else. Before we use that, we will actually be zigzagging, but I'm just going to press it so that it's nice and flat underneath, and that's sticking out beautifully for me. Okay, back to the sewing machine. Okay, for zigzag I'm going to change this to number 4, that's the stitch width, and I'm going to change stitch length. I prefer it at 4 and 2. You don't have to have it exactly at that, that's just my preference. Okay, and sewing, basically just finishing off both of those seam edges so that they're neat. You could do this on an overlocker if you were used to using an overlocker. If you're still a beginner sewer, then maybe a sewing machine is the safest option. Just easier for you as a beginner. Okay, we're back at the ironing board. I've zigzagged both of those edges, and I'm just going to iron them to flatten them. Okay, I've left them in the same position as they were. Of course, I opened that out when I zigzagged, so that's separate, but it's still, that's the top. This is the left hand seam allowance looking from the inside with this. Okay, now I'm going to turn the seam allowance under, and I'm not turning under this fabric on this side here, it's just this seam allowance. So this will be turned under like that, which will leave a seam allowance of probably about, take away 3 millimeters from 2.5, so 2.2 millimeters from here to here. And there should be about 3 millimeters on this side. You can even make it 2 if you're really good and really neat. Okay, so I will actually be folding that over, and I'll be ironing it flat so that it's a perfect width all the way along. Okay, so I've ironed that 3 millimeter allowance all along that seam allowance there, and I'm going to be placing that on top of the zip, remembering to put the zip just the 1/2 centimeter down from the top as it was before, and I will pin it in place. Okay, I'll be pinning it and then I will be tacking it, and it's got to be very close to the teeth. It's hard to see the teeth on this navy blue one, but as close to the teeth as you can place it basically, which means that you might like to pull this zip tab down halfway, pin it on, and then pull it back up, so you never actually have to deal with that zip tab when you're pinning or tacking. There you can see I've pinned that on to halfway, and I'm going to pull the zip tab up. It's very hard to do it one-handed, but I will. I'm going to pull that up, and then I'm going to continue pinning down here, and then I will tack down there. Okay, now I've actually pinned all the way down there, and I'm going to start tacking. Now tacking is just basically a very long stitch. I've got double thread on a needle, I've put a knot in the end of it, and I'm going to tack it because that will hold the zip tape onto the fabric without any pins being there, because pins are a pain when you're trying to sew on a zip. I'm doing great big stitches. None of these stitches are important particularly. I usually do them probably about 1 centimetre each, and they work like the pins, except that you're actually not going to have those pin heads getting in the way and dragging underneath your sewing machine. Okay, so I'll just basically pull out each pin as I go along, do a tacking stitch, and when I get to the bottom I'll show you what I do. Okay, I'm at the bottom of the row of tacking, and I'm just going to take another stitch, just going in at the end of that stitch and coming out where I came out originally. Then all I need to do is just cut that thread, and that will be very easy to undo later, but it will hold it beautifully in the meantime. Now I have actually used the red thread for tacking, and I would always use thread that doesn't match for tacking, but just a point, I've got red thread for all of my stitching. That's not normal. You usually use thread that matches your fabric, so I would use a cream thread to match a cream fabric when I'm sewing a stitch on. Okay, now back to the sewing machine. I'm going to change this normal foot for a zipper foot. The zipper foot has got like a hole either side of itself, and that means that the needle can go in either side and it will still hold it down, but it won't get caught on the zipper teeth as it would with this one here. Your machine will have a particular number. Generally the modern Bonita machines have number 4 for the zipper feet, but you'll find out which one you need to change. An important point to note is that the needle, if it went directly down into this zipper foot, would actually go directly down into the needle into the foot, and it would damage the needle and break it. Okay, so first of all we're actually going to change, because we were on zigzag, so we're changing back to straight stitch, but we're also working with this style here, and for this first row of stitching I'm going to change the needle position so that the needle is to the right of the foot, so I'm turning it to this side here, which means that the needle is now on the right side of the foot. Okay, I'm changing the stitch length back to 2.5. Okay, I have had to change my sewing machine because I brought a student model home and forgot to bring the correct zipper foot, and mine doesn't fit that machine properly. Okay, so we're going to reverse, going backwards, just 2 or 3 stitches, and then basically stitching forwards all the way along, keeping the zipper foot nice and close to the teeth of the zip, and that means that the stitching will be very straight. Now just before you get to the end, you leave the needle in, lift the foot, pull the tab back behind the foot, and put the needle back, put the foot down again, and then continue to stitch down to the end and back stitch from here. Okay. Now this tacking will come out very easily. You can just basically pull that, just this bit at the end here that you stitched over, you should be able to pull out or just cut, and then you can just pull the whole thing out. Okay, there we go, and the tacking is out, and you have a lovely straight row of stitching down the side of the zipper teeth. Okay, and the next stage will be to put the flap over that. Okay, here's a very neat row of stitching back at the ironing board again. we're basically going to flip this whole side so the seam allowance and the fabric will go back over, and we'll be doing a row of stitching that goes down this side here and across the bottom where the bottom stop is. Okay, so first of all I'm actually just going to press that nice and flat, and then I'm going to pin it and tack it. I tack everything in a zip. I don't tack a lot of things, but I tack everything, and the zips always turn out beautifully. Okay, now you have to be careful with that zip tab. You don't really want that lump, so it probably wasn't wise of me to actually iron over that. Okay, one little trick that I've actually found in a book is to put a piece of clear sticky tape, about 1 centimetre wide, along the edge of this seam here, and that gives you a lovely straight rectangle to use as your guide. Now I don't particularly like to stitch it on with a sewing machine because I have had some of the sticky tape caught, but it's great when you're actually doing the pinning and the tacking, and I'll show you why in a little while. Okay, so I've pinned across here. Now you can feel in the fabric, you can feel where the bottom stop is. So I've actually felt that, and I've put the pin just below that. And then I've pinned up the side here, and if you look close, it's not exactly right next to the sticky tape. It's a little bit, just a couple of millimetres away from it, and I've pinned all the way up there. And the next stage is actually to tack. And I'm going to tack across here right next to the sticky tape. Right next to the sticky tape, all the way up this side here. And I'm going to do it neatly, long stitches but very straight, so that will be my guide when I use the sewing machine. This is the pins from the other side. You can see that they're just holding the zip down on this side here. The stitching is basically almost hidden along there, and it's on that little very narrow seam there. Now I'm going to tack on the other side. Now I'm tacking along here. I've got my knot. I'm taking slightly smaller stitches, and I'm going directly along the side of the sticky tape, which is going to give me a lovely straight line all the way up here. Okay, I have that pin tacked all the way up. I took the pins out as I went, and now I'm just going to take off that sticky tape, because I do find that if you sew it with it on, it sometimes gets stuck underneath the teeth. The next thing I'm going to do is actually unpick a little bit of this machine basting here. That seems a little odd because we did that to keep it closed, but that will allow me to take down the zip tab so that I don't have to stitch past that later. Okay, so I'm unpicking just probably about 8 to 10 centimetres, and you can see that the zip is hiding in there, and my tacking is actually holding it together at the moment. It just needs to be far enough down that you can pull this down when you're sewing, so that's plenty far enough down. Okay, I'm going to change the needle position again so that the needle is now on the left hand side rather than the right hand side. The foot is lined up so that this edge of the foot is actually just coming right next to the tacking, and I'll be stitching slightly to the right of the tacking, very slight. Okay, I'm going to do 2 or 3 back stitches to get me to where the seam is, and then I'm going to go forwards and make a pivot at the corner of my tacking, and then so lift the foot, pivot, and then come up the side of the tacking, using the tacking as my stitching guide. Now I can stop here, lift the foot, pull the zip tab backwards behind where I'm stitching, lower the foot again, and then continue stitching, and that means that I don't have a lump around the zip tab as you often get on zips if you don't move it. When I get to the end, of course, I will have to do 2 or 3 stitches back stitch, then pull it out, trim the threads. Okay, and basically my zip is done. All I need to do now is take out this tacking here and this machine basting along here. Tacking, of course, is very easy to remove. Just pull it out. Okay, and that's all the way out. Then this here, now just be careful that you very carefully cut your machine basting. Don't cut your fabric, just the threads in between the two layers of fabric. And as you go, you just keep unpicking, and then you can go back and you can pull out those little threads that are hanging. Show you the finished product in a minute. Okay, pull all those little threads out. If you can't pull them, you might need to just pull it and then trim it, and it will just hide away in the edge of the fabric. Okay, and here is your beautifully completed zip, which we'll undo and close again. And it has that lovely flap which hides the teeth all the way down. And this one is a great one, as I said, for putting into the side of a skirt, the back of a dress, basically all those types of things.